Hi, everybody, and welcome to our webcast, Cultivating a Fostering Community, Recruit, Reengage, Renew, How to Get More Pets into Foster right now. We have a ton of stuff, great information for you. I'll be talking about strategies and some research we've done. And after that, Jenica Lurie, the dog marketing manager for Austin Pets Alive, will be talking a little bit about how they use those strategies to get pets into foster and adopted from foster in their program. If you look in the handout tab, you'll be able to see we put a document in there that has links to a whole bunch of resources that I'll probably mention today. So we're going to start with Patty's story. Patty was she was my fourth foster. And she was a different one because when she came into the shelter, she was immediately super, super stressed. I saw her several times in passing. Every time I saw her, she looked like she was being kidnapped. She was just absolutely frantic. And you can see in this picture, which was taken while she was in the shelter, just that she looks pretty stressed. Like her eyes are, she's gotten kind of pink and she's panting, So we had done short-term foster for about 4 weekends. And my husband was sure that we could do short-term foster, and that was it. Patty, she had lived out her 9 lives at the shelter, and they had gotten her into a foster home temporarily, but the foster couldn't keep her. And so she was so stressed out in the shelter that she just couldn't go back. So I came to pick up a different dog for the weekend, and I met Kristen Hassan came up and she said, "Hey, would you mind taking Patty for the weekend?" And I said, "Sure, we'll take her. That's totally fine." Literally stepped into the car and was a completely different dog. She was super just relaxed, super friendly, really laid back dog, the complete opposite of the dog that she was in the shelter. And after the weekend was ending, and Kristen was like, "Well, we haven't found another foster to take her. Can you keep her for a few more days?" And so we kind of worked that out where Lee would agree to a couple of days and then we'd have a couple of days more. Ended up where we realized during the course of this that we actually could do longer term fostering, and it really was not as hard as we had thought it was. And so we ended up becoming longer term fosters because Patty was able to stay with us. And she, through her experience in foster, we were able to tell, what she was like in a home, which was so different than the pet she was in the shelter. Foster recruitment. We're going to talk in this webcast mainly about public facing efforts. There is so much in recruitment that I feel like I could talk about this for the next week. There's just so much great stuff out there. But we're going to talk mostly about public facing efforts. And I want to make sure that everyone knows that recruiting new fosters really does require communication staff and foster staff to be working hand in hand. At least once during every apprenticeship that we do, I'll give a version of this presentation, and someone will come up to me afterward and say, how can I, start finding new fosters if I don't have any access to social media and I don't have a working relationship with our communications team. And that makes it really tough. So just want to put out here, having that good working relationship and having foster and communications working hand in hand is going to make it extremely effective for you to be recruiting fosters. So we're going to talk about 4 different things: planning, which also includes aiming for a foster base that's as diverse as your community, analyzing your data, removing barriers. We're going to really try to get through this quickly. There's so much information. Recruiting, Reengaging, which is helping those supporters make a leap to fostering who are maybe supporting you in another area, such as volunteering or donating. And then reducing the length of stay in foster so that experienced caregivers can take on more pets, which may be more important than any of this. So before you begin, everything comes down to emotional connection. When you are trying to recruit fosters, you are trying to make an emotional connection between them and a pet, or them and your foster program. So always remember that in your communications. Emotional connection is what is going to motivate people to act. Removing barriers. I'm going to just touch on this, even though it is an extremely, extremely important piece. Making it as easy to foster as it is to adopt. Making the wording on your application for foster or sign up for foster, which one sounds more welcoming? So usually you'd say sign up or interest form. And then having more than one way of onboarding. So consider doing online onboarding and maybe on the spot training if somebody comes into the shelter, just in case, so that you don't miss any sections of your community who, aren't able to get online. Make sure that all volunteers are fosters automatically. These are probably your perfect fosters because they already have these emotional connections with the pets in your shelter, and they have the skills to handle them in the shelter, which is, one of the most stressful places they can be. Removing barriers and making it as easy as possible for people to sign up to foster and to get a pet into their home as quickly as possible. This is a huge, it's very, very important. So another thing to think about is if your foster base reflects your community, the makeup of your community. So this is Fairfax, kind of an overview. We did a heat map of the stray intakes around the county, and we found that the areas with the red are the ones where they were taking in most of the strays. Now, the area with the circle around it is the shelter is in there. And what we found was that the pets, was that the fosters all generally lived, almost all of them lived within that circle. And all the pets were coming in from other areas. And so the pets were not being fostered in the places where they, came from, which, would make it, would be really, make it conductive to them finding their way back home. And so, I think for a long time, traditionally foster was something for a very smaller number of pets. And we have been recruiting we have been just trying to recruit any way we can, and that is awesome. But I think that sometimes our methods at this point, we need to diversify them so that we can make sure that we engage our entire communities. So this is Dallas Animal Services. They do a weekly thing on Saturdays where they do posts in Spanish and in English. And they have a staff member who speaks Spanish walking to the shelter and talking about the pets who are adoptable and fosterable. And, when you think about it, so I was looking up, I think a very large portion of people in Dallas speak Spanish as a first language. So what we found in Fairfax was that in Fairfax, 13.5% of our population speak Spanish as their first language. And at the time, back in 2014, there was no materials in Spanish. We weren't recruiting in Spanish. When you're talking about Fairfax County, it has about 1.2 million inhabitants. And because we weren't recruiting in Spanish to people who spoke Spanish, we were leaving out like tens of thousands of community members who were not receiving the invitation to foster for us. If your community has, just take a look at your demographics, take a look at your foster program, look at your foster base, and see how can I extend the invitation to foster to new sections of the community who maybe aren't getting the invitation yet. So go ahead and look at your data. Looking at the data on your foster recruitment can be really, really helpful because you can see where you're actually recruiting people from, and you can kind of fine tune your strategy. So this is data from an organization that I looked at a couple of years ago. We were working really, really heavy on Instagram. I had been really promoting foster on Instagram, and it turned out we only had 4 people who were found via Instagram. And so we ended up taking that effort and moving it somewhere else. Now, Nextdoor, on the other hand, was something we hadn't promoted at all. And we were like, Nextdoor, who did a promotion on Nextdoor? And it turns out 2 random fosters put a thing up and just took it upon themselves to, to promote the foster program on Nextdoor. And we got 2 fosters, which was amazing. And we were like, well, what could we do if we ask all of our foster caregivers to do the same thing? We could probably recruit a whole lot more people. And then 21 out of them were unknown. And so we knew we needed to require a question on our foster sign-up form that required an answer to like where they first saw the information about a foster program. So we'll talk about recruitment first. We did some market research about 3 or 4 years ago, and I've been obsessed with it ever since. It is the research on prospective fosters and how the messaging and techniques that you can use that will help turn prospective fosters into applicants. So one of the first things that they did was they asked people who knows about the homeless pet problem in their area. And maybe not surprisingly entirely, the vast majority of people don't realize that homeless pets in their area is a problem. And so they don't really so if they don't realize that they have a problem with homeless pets, how do they know that foster is going to help fix that problem? So explaining these things can be really helpful. And then we asked, well, what do you know about the best ways to help homeless pets? And this was really interesting. So at the top is most helpful, the bottom is least helpful. Adoption was their main one. They were like, well, we can adopt. And then donating money, then down with like donating supplies and volunteering. And the least effective, they thought, was telling others about the organization or about homeless pets so they can help. And where would you think that foster would go? I would assume that it would go up there with adoption, or maybe even above adoption, because some pets can't even be adopted unless they are fostered. But that's how helpful they thought it was. They didn't know. So people don't realize how helpful foster is to organizations and how it can save lives, is the takeaway from this part of the study. Prospects' reasons not to foster. So this is probably not very surprising. The major reasons are people are afraid of getting attached. They don't have enough time in their schedule. They have existing pets who maybe, they aren't able to foster with them. There's general uncertainty, and then their housing, like maybe they live in an apartment that's too small. And then there's some other smaller things. So looking at these major bubbles of reasons not to foster, there is one thing that could pop every single one of them, and that is short-term foster. So the takeaway here is lowering the bar. So if they don't have enough time, say you have a field trip program, well, they don't really need a whole lot of time. You can take a dog out for just like an hour and bring it back. Human attachment is not as much of an issue because you at least feel like you're not going to get as attached when you have take a pet out for an hour than taking a pet for a number of days or weeks. Existing pets, especially if it's short-term, if it's a field trip program or an overnight even, you don't have to introduce them. General uncertainty, it is so much easier to put a toe into the water than it is to jump in. And putting a toe into the water with short-term foster, it just makes it a lot easier for people to swallow. And then housing, they don't necessarily need to bring the pet to their house. So what kind of fosters are prospective fosters interested in? This one was really, really interesting. All right, so we got the major one is weekend and respite, last chance, emergency, seasonal, and only 12% picked until adoption, which was really interesting. So you've got a couple of themes here. One is short term. People want to feel like it's short term. They don't want to, I think that traditionally foster has meant you take a pet and you have it until adoption, and that could be like a year and a half from now. And that's terrifying, really. But weekend foster, that just seems a lot easier. So weekend, emergency is also, and seasonal, which are also kind of defined time periods. And then also they, with last chance and with emergency, people want to know how what they're doing is going to help how it's going to help save lives. So they want to see it like really concretely. How is my taking this pet home and caring for it going to help save lives? And this is another one that's really interesting. What pets are prospective fosters? What pets do prospective fosters want to foster? I certainly thought the answer was going to be like kittens, and it was not. The largest number of people surveyed want to take home adult dogs. That actually blew my mind when I saw that, when I read it in the study, and I've been thinking about it ever since. I think that partly people do want to take home big dogs. Actually, Greater Good did when they launched their stay home and foster program, they found the same thing, that the vast majority of people who wrote in and signed up to foster did want to take home big dogs. I think that the history kind of it gets in the way, because people think, I want to take home a big dog, but I don't want a big dog for the next year and a half. I think that people want to take home big dogs, but they need us to ask them in a way that is accessible to them. They need us to lower the bar and make it, possible to do something for a shorter period, or do it in a way that doesn't seem overwhelming. So best messaging. First, I really like the quote up there. Yours may not be their forever home, but you can help them remember what home feels like. People did not understand how fostering leads to adoption, and how those two things work hand in hand. Telling them can be really helpful, and it can make them want to sign up. Giving them options, reassuring them that fostering is something they can do. People, when they haven't learned about foster, or they don't have a friend who's fostering, it can seem really daunting. And when you reassure them that it really it's pretty easy, and you'll get support, that can be really helpful as well. And then breaking stereotypes. So creating messaging that helps break the stereotype of shelter pets as broken. That was some messaging that resonated well with prospective fosters. So we have the market research is linked in the document that we uploaded in the handout section. So you can take a look at it, anytime. This is just one of the messaging series that we tested on the audiences, and this is one of the messages that resounded the most with people. Fostering is an important step on a pet's journey to their forever home. A home environment is best for their health and well-being. Fostering cats and dogs allows them to thrive in a home environment and practice forming bonds with their caregivers. For pets who have been waiting longer for adoption, foster caregivers can help reassure adopters that these pets are a good fit for a home and speak to the type of home or family that would be the best match for the pet. So explaining how does foster and adoption work, and how are you as the foster helping that pet move on to their adoptive home. So foster pleas for specific pets. This is Chopper. I think I probably ought to not show this, but we just, for lack of time, foster pleas for specific pets can be really, really, really effective. Probably one of the most effective ways to recruit fosters. Telling the pet story and kind of helping people to get to know that pet can be a really effective way, and letting them know, why the pet needs foster. So you can do foster pleas for specific types of pets. Austin Pets Alive is pretty much the gold standard for doing these types of pleas for fosters for pets who are a little bit harder to place. I just really like this post on kitties with ringworm who needed foster. It explains that it's not, ringworm is not the end of the world. It isn't a big deal, but it's contagious, but here's what it does. And here's why little kittens don't or often get ringworm, because they haven't grown their immune systems that well. All of this kind of background knowledge that we have in sheltering and rescue about like kittens' immune systems and things like that, people in the general public generally don't know. And it can help you to find fosters when you explain that this pet needs you more because of a certain thing. And then Pima Animal Care Center, they did a post on harder to place dogs. So, and I really just like the way that it was worded. Some dogs need a foster simply to be able to relax and let their true personality shine. Others would love a foster to commit to helping them further develop some pre-outlined skills they've been working on. Their foster coordinator told me that this post had generated multiple inquiries and multiple requests to foster. And then foster pleas for specific programs. So safety net fostering, it's a new thing. People, when they do safety net foster, the point is that the pet is held temporarily by the organization, and in hopes that they can reunite it with its owner after they get through a temporary crisis. And it's kind of amazing, but it does require a little bit of messaging and kind of letting the public know. I think one of the coolest things about this type of fostering is that, number one, you keep a pet from having to, let go of its owner. Also, you don't have to market the pet or meet with potential adopters and do that whole marketing and adoption thing, which there are some fosters who just aren't totally into. Foster pleas for specific programs. The other night, Lifeline did a Q&A. They're starting a safety net fostering program, and they did a Q&A on Facebook Live to answer people's questions about it. And it was just, really a great way to get people comfortable with understanding why they need fosters, understanding what the fosters will do, and all of those types of things before they sign up to do it. One of the things that we've found is that the organizations with the biggest foster programs do something very, very differently. They talk about foster literally all the time. So a couple of years ago, looked into about 7 of the organizations with the highest numbers of fosters that I knew of, and then looked at their social media and did like a tally and tried to figure out, okay, what percentage of these posts have to do with foster? And so that counted any post that mentions foster in any way. It could be a plea for fosters. It could be a story about a pet in foster. It could be a story about something totally different that just mentions the pet had been in foster. So really bringing foster into the conversation and talking about it as much as we do adoption. And those organizations are talking about foster in 30% of their social media posts. They're posting 5 and 6 times a day, a lot of them. So they're talking about foster more than once every single day with their community. And what that does is it gets the community familiar with fostering. It makes fostering seem less like something that's scary and unknown, more like, oh, look, this is a big dog laying on someone's couch. That's what we do here in Atlanta. And so I had, a couple of posts. Those are just 3 posts from Lifeline that on consecutive days that all had to do with foster. And you can work fostering in your messaging in so many different ways. I just like these 2, El Paso, they do a weekly shelter update with information, and they include foster in there. So you can see how many pets are in foster right now, how many cats, how many dogs. They also did a field update and talked about this dog that their APOs rescued and mentioned that he's safe in a foster home. Word of mouth is an extremely effective tool for recruiting fosters. Usually it's one of the most, when I've seen the data on foster recruitment from organizations, it's usually one of the highest most effective ways. This couple, I was with best friends during Hurricane Harvey at the NRG Arena, and this couple, we were, so it was at the NRG Arena, and there was one day when there were people tailgating outside for a football game, and they were right outside where we were. And so we ended up talking to them, and they came in and fostered a dog. Well, then after the next few weeks, they brought back like 5 or 6 different friends, and all of their friends took dogs home to foster. And it was amazing. It was just like the most wonderful, word of mouth. And then online imprinted materials. So if your organization is doing some type of event, having some information on fostering that people can take home with them and look back at. Also having a foster page on your website, so you can tell supporters what fostering is about and how to sign up. All right, local media can be also a really, really effective tool. This is a list of news releases from Pima Animal Care Center in June 2019. There are, 7 of them that went out in that month. And here's a list of local news outlets that picked up their stories just in 1 month. It's just amazing. They have a public information officer named Nikki Reck, who is just incredible. On the sheet in the handout is a link to a video. It's like 3 minutes long, where she basically talks about her techniques for getting the media to respond and to engage with them. So definitely check out the video if you haven't seen it already. And then local businesses and government entities, they're frequently, you don't think about them often, but they can be really, really good fosters. So in Memphis, they have a partnership with the Firehouse, who is fostering dogs for them. And then this cat, Magnus, is from Asheville, where they have a partnership with a wild bird feed store, who fosters some of their longer term cats. Reengaging. So Reengaging is taking people who are already supporting you, but not fosters, and turning them into fosters, just making it really, really easy for them to make that transition and, tempting them a little bit to try it. So this is Lost Dog and Cat Rescue Foundation relaunched their volunteer newsletter over the summer. And they had a couple of dogs who were like large dogs, they were real active, they needed fosters, and they were like, what do we do? And so they ended up like making one of their volunteer newsletters about fostering. So they have a note from a foster, and then they have a foster plea, and it's all going out to their volunteers who already know already know their pets and have, attachments with them. And then they also have a field trip program called Dog Ventures. And on their Dog Ventures landing page at the bottom, they tell you, here's what you do if you fall in love with the dog that you're with and you'd like to become a longer term foster of the dog. Or if you've gotten to know a dog during Dog Ventures, you can be a champion and help them advocate for their adoption. So other re-engagement techniques, obviously make all volunteers into fosters automatically. Finder to foster programs. So people who find strays and bring them into the shelter, having a program where they can foster that pet until, it's ready for adoption. That really helps it helps recruit new fosters, but it also helps to keep the pets, being cared for in the communities that they came from. Foster fails are another one that people ask me about constantly. And they're kind of a hard subject. We have research that says about 40% of fosters fail at some point. They end up adopting their pet, and that's awesome. There's not really a whole lot you can do to prevent that. So what I recommend is just recruiting constantly in order to offset the number of fosters that end up not being able to foster after they adopt. There are a couple of other things you can do. Asking them to write a testimonial on social media. Hey, I know you're adopting Sally, and she, and you're probably not going to be able to adopt to foster anymore, but maybe if you could, write something about it and ask your family and friends if they might be interested in fostering for us, see what happens. And then also do rewards. What percentage of shorter term fosters become longer term fosters? So these are for programs such as short-term foster. So you're talking about weekend, overnight foster, holiday foster, field trips. A percentage of those pets in organizations across the country from our research do become longer-term fosters. It helps to lower the bar. They can it's a little less scary. Emergency foster, as we saw during COVID, it can be an incredible recruitment tool for new fosters. People do tend to, because of the emotional connection usually there is to whatever crisis that it's having. It kind of helps them to kind of get over that hump of being nervous, and so a lot of people are a little more comfortable applying. And emergency foster can be a great tool for building up your foster program. Also, these are just things you can use in the shelter. In Austin Animal Center, they had a sign-on dogs kennels that had been there for over 30 days that they're available for foster or adoption, which helped to let people who were walking through the shelter realize that they could be fosters as well. And then a board that shows pets in foster and then pets who need a foster. All right, renewal. This part I only did a little bit on because Jenica's going to talk about it, but renewal is basically developing a plan to get the pets in foster marketed so that they get adopted quickly and their fosters are open for other pets. This is a news story out of Tucson about a couple who fostered. They had fostered something like 17 dogs over a 9-month period. They could have been fostering one dog, but because their pets were marketed effectively, they were able to keep taking different fosters. And of course, having a news segment about you is probably a pretty good perk for fosters as well. I will also say that there's not much that helps you or that makes you feel more seen as a foster as having your organization, market your foster pet. So renewal strategy, set expectations in the beginning, let fosters know, hey, we need you to foster. And some of this is, we will need you to, help us learn about the pet, take pictures or send us give us a bio or just send us information about this pet so we can market the pet. Also creating a process for marketing and adopting from foster. This can look in many different ways. There is a link in the handout that will tell you about that basically shows you how to create a process for marketing and adoption for foster. And there are tons of links from organizations that show, what they're like screenshots of the things they've built. And also make sure to build in support for those fosters who are not comfortable with a camera or, who could use some help, with marketing from another volunteer. And if you have some specific, some experienced fosters who take pets, and they're pretty much going to take a new pet right away when they get their pet adopted, you can prioritize their pets and just make, kind of concentrate on them and make sure that they get marketed. If you're unable to do it with every pet who's in foster. Comprehensive foster recruitment plan. Traditionally, we've basically, due to time, we've recruited on an as-needed basis. I think as we move into a more a system that is based on foster as opposed to caring for pets in shelter, we are going to need a more comprehensive approach to recruiting fosters. We need to really think about it kind of like we think about a marketing plan, and include all of the different ways you'll be recruiting. So again, on that list is a link to a comprehensive foster recruitment plan that kind of breaks out all of the different areas that you might be interested in working on to recruit fosters throughout the year. And I think that that really thinking about it and planning out ahead of time, here's what we're gonna do, 4 press releases about, 2 about kittens and 3 about, or whatever. That can be really, I think it can be really effective. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing and let Jenica do her presentation.
Okay, so just to remind everyone, I'm Jenica. I'm the dog marketing manager at Austin Pets Alive in Austin, Texas. I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk about some of our messaging in order to recruit fosters, and then some of the initiatives we put into place in order to retain and support them. And that does include how to help them get their dogs marketed and adopted. That way they can take in more dogs, as Kelly was talking about. So, okay. So we use a variety of graphics, which I'm going to show over the next few slides in order to make it really succinct. The first one here is there are a lot of people who actually don't necessarily know the difference between adopting and fostering, which can seem really weird as people who work in a shelter. Like it seems very cut and dry, but there are just generally a lot of people who don't know what fostering is. So we've created graphics to help people understand, like, this is the difference between adoption and the difference between fostering. And just because you are a foster now doesn't mean that you can't adopt the dog that you're fostering or a different dog down the line. So when it comes to recruitment, we, as Kelly was talking about, we push pretty hard on our main Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We push out as much as we can. Like specific pleas. We push out pleas for, and I can speak more specifically to the dog side, but we push out pleas for dogs who need specific homes and groupings. We push out success stories about fostering, all of those different avenues that point to this is fostering, this is what it is, whether it's a direct ask, this dog needs to be fostered, please foster it, or if it's a look at this amazing story about this dog that was in a foster home and look at how it's thriving now. But either way, keeping the fostering top of mind for our audience and our community. Another way that we make it as easy as possible is by giving people an incredibly direct access to our foster team when they're looking to have questions answered, or if they are actually inquiring about fostering a specific dog or any dogs at all. So we do put our foster@austinpetsalive.org email on pretty much any plea that we put out, unless it is for a very specific dog. And then often we'll just put their web profile link. But this makes it just incredibly accessible for people who have questions. They don't have to go, paging through trying to figure out the exact right contact person. They can just go ahead and email that foster at email address in order to get the answers that they need. We also plea via email to our existing foster base. We have a lot of people who have fostered in the past and then go inactive. And so we are constantly trying to, as Kelly was talking about, re-engage those fosters to get them to take home an animal, even if they haven't done it for years, because everyone's situations are constantly changing. There could be a reason why someone stopped fostering. They could be ready to do it again. And we just need to remind them by popping into their inbox every so often. And this is pretty timely, but we put out at Austin Pets Live, we put out a lot of educational material that is part of the reason why I think people feel pretty comfortable coming to us when there's a disaster. So Hurricane Harvey was an example that Kelly used, and most recently Winter Storm Lurie. So we do serve as a place that people know, when these crises are happening, that we're here to provide resources, and we are here to also care for the dogs in our care and try to get them, into foster homes if that's as quickly as possible in order to free up resources to help in other ways. So in some ways we do capitalize on the emergencies that happen by using that as an opportunity to remind people of why fostering is so beneficial and why and how you can really save lives by fostering, especially in that time of need, in that emergency situation, but actually all year long, all the time. And then as for the actual the actual process, we try to streamline our application. So we don't do phone interviews or house visits, but we are checking every application for red flags and having further conversations if necessary. But we just want to make that application and onboarding process as easy as possible so that people aren't dropping out mid application or mid onboarding process becoming a foster. So this is another graphic of, this is how you do it. It's these simple and easy steps, and we'll walk you through it. And we have set up multiple different ways. So we have Dog and Dash, which formed out of COVID, which allows people to pick up a dog, like a relatively easy dog sight unseen, and take it home with that minimum 2-week foster commitment, or, even better, fostering until adoption. But it's just a simple way. It was a simple way during the pandemic, which is currently still happening. So we're still utilizing this program for people to just come and grab a dog and really save a life. And that was how we messaged that out. We also, of course, use our website, email. So we're kind of hitting our community from all sides, just hammering home how important fostering really is. This is kind of where I'll talk about retention and support, because dog fostering does have phases. And what we want to do is get a foster all the way to the point where the dog was adopted so that they can then take home another dog. So in order to, retain and support the fosters that we do have, we are consistently using our mission statements and communicating them regularly. What do people want to understand about your program, and why do you do what you do? I think people foster because it really does save lives, and they truly believe it. It's great to have a companion around, but I think that people know what they're getting themselves into, and they feel, they want to help and contribute. So it's just kind of reminding them how this really does help and contribute. Giving resources such as one-on-one time. We have a heavier a population of behavior dogs at Austin Pets Alive. So we do have one-on-one time with behavior specialists, also medical dogs, so medical specialists, behavior training videos. If a foster takes a dog home and the dog is being a little bit reactive on leash, giving, a video on how you can help manage those behaviors, and just having like a YouTube library of all of those videos that people can access at any time. We also do a monthly foster orientation so that we can cover the basics, and you can attend at any time. It doesn't have to be when you're first starting out fostering. And then we also just have our foster website with resources, and our foster dog portal, which is newer and basically gives kind of an overview and a web overview of all things that are specific to whatever dog that you're fostering. So providing all of those resources really, I think, brings people's comfort level up to, to being ready to adopt, knowing that if they need help, we're going to be there to help. And as far as retention goes, we, as Kelly was talking about, showing appreciation for fosters has proved so important. And we do that through monthly drawings. We have a platinum foster program. We share success stories out to our foster base, but also to our entire community about, specific fosters and what happened with the pet they ended up fostering, how they found a home, how they came to us, and giving that recognition that's so deserved for people to take the time to really foster an animal. I think just boosts that morale and makes people want to come back and keep fostering. And we do those shout outs on we have a closed volunteer Facebook group, but we also do them on our public facing pages, on our main pages, and our, annex pages, like our dog foster to adopt page, our dog foster needs page. So it's really just showing people how much we appreciate the fact that they are fostering and how much of a difference they really are making. And then just making sure that the teams that you have put in place to act as a resource are accessible and they can respond quickly and just that there's always someone there to help if there's a question. These are just some stats over the last year as far as foster dog placements, dogs adopted from foster, new fosters recruited at APA. I will preface this with COVID did in some ways really help us get, in most ways, really help us get so many more dogs into foster homes as people weren't able to travel for work or for leisure. We saw just such a huge uptick in placements and adoptions some months as well, and then just a huge increase in new fosters that were recruited. And then this is a little bit more of my specialty, which is marketing pets in foster for adoption. So one thing, and this goes along with just our general foster messaging, but just making resources incredibly accessible. This is a public facing page on our website. People can go in and they can click view here and they'll be able to see just a whole page of resources on how to market your dog, the best way to do things, exact messaging, just making it as easy as possible for them to market their foster dog. And one of the biggest messages that we put out there is that it's really important when marketing your foster dog to create an emotional connection. So this is through stories, pictures, videos, anything that can happen for a foster to create an emotional connection, or for a potential adopter to create an emotional connection with an audience. And that could drive the audience to share or adopt, whether it's their web profile or a social media post. But the best way, and this goes, it's word of mouth, but it's also, social media is a huge way. We're doing word of mouth right now, especially in a pandemic. It's kind of the only way that a lot of people are able to spread that information. So just being a spokesperson, teaching people how to be a spokesperson for their foster dogs, and taking any opportunity to highlight the foster dog whenever they can. And just reminding them that, having fosters remind adopters by adopting and rescuing a dog, you really are saving a life. And then as far as accessibility, again, we have created a photo and video form and also a bio and scores form where fosters can go in and just upload pictures. It's mobile friendly. It works on desktop. They can go in and upload pictures, videos. They can, give us information about the dog. And that way on our end, we can go in and beef up their online profiles, which is how many people at Austin Pets Live first find their dogs. But all of that content can also be used to go out on our main social media pages, and they can be used for media pitches, traditional media like Kelly was talking about. They can be used for success stories. There's just a million ways that we can help fosters market their dogs when we make it really easy for them to send the materials that we need to be able to help them. So really what we found is that the best way to help fosters market their dog is by making it as easy as physically possible. Because as Kelly said, not everyone is always going to want to do the marketing thing, and that's okay. But most people can take pictures on their phone and can write a couple sentences or even just answer a couple of questions about their dog. And if they can't, then, offering support for people to be able, staff or volunteers to be able to go and help them with that. If that is what they prefer, and just making it as easy as physically possible. Yeah, and that is all I have.
Thank you so much, Jenica. Right now, we have a few minutes. Lisa Ward, our Director of Education, is going to come on and help us with Q&A.
Great job, you guys. I mean, so much information coming at everyone. It's just a really amazing job. Okay, first question. Do you think an email plea are better than a plea on, say, a volunteer foster group? Best ways to get a plea out to your current foster and volunteers. So I think this is really about communication.
Really, it's a really good question. And I think it probably varies by organization, and how much engagement there is in the volunteer and foster group. If it's a group that's just going strong, it might be, stronger than email. But I would try to get a little bit of data on it, for your organization, to see which one would work better for you. Jenica, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do think that it just kind of depends on numbers, really. So if your existing foster base, if you have their emails, that is a much more direct access, because you can assume that it's more likely they're going to see an email than it is they'll happen upon or click on a notification on Facebook. But if your Facebook volunteer groups or your foster groups are huge and much bigger than your list of past fosters, then I think that's the way to go. But it does seem like it's pretty shelter specific. And honestly, I just recommend doing it all. That's what we do. Pushing and plugging in every place that you possibly can't hurt.
Great, thank you. And that could be my dog barking because someone's walking by our house. So I apologize for that. I have good watchdogs. How do you screen people for dog days out?
That is a really good question too. So we recommend opening short-term programs to the general public, and screening maybe is not what we recommend, but a lot of organizations do a very, very quick in-person, here are a few things you need to know about the program. Here's, how to, keep safe and stuff like that. So the programs that I've seen that are really, really successful are open to the public and have very few barriers for pets being taken out, but they have standard operating procedures that they look at, every few months, and kind of tweak the program to make sure that they are putting in the safety measures that they need to in order to keep the program going.
I wish you could hear all the howling in my household going on right now as you're answering that question, and forgive me. So there's a question in the chat over here for Jenica. What specific incentives or specific recognition do you do for your foster families? And can you explain your platinum foster parents and what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the incentive that people have commented on that they really appreciate the most is public recognition. So that would be these success stories that we post out on our main pages, or in the example that Kelly gave in Arizona, I believe it was, pitching those stories to local media so that people can really see themselves doing the life-saving work. But as far as the specific benefits of a platinum foster, so at Awesome Pets Alive, we have thrift stores that generate a lot of our, revenue to be able to operate day to day. So platinum fosters get 30% discounts at thrift stores if they are for the full calendar year, because it's reevaluated every year. They also get a t-shirt, and they basically, if there's any, advance or priority perks that we can offer that we don't know of yet, throughout the year, we'll offer those to them first. So it's kind of a combo of things, but I think that whatever you can offer, but really the public recognition piece seems to be the thing that people appreciate the most.
Speaking my language, t-shirts, thrift shops, discounts. Now we're talking. One other follow-up question to that is, what are the requirements to be a platinum foster for you guys?
Yeah, so platinum foster, and this is a newer program, but they're an active and good standing foster, and they've fostered 15 or more dogs, or for a cumulative half of the year, fostered a longer stay dog, which for us is 300 plus days, or 3 or more dogs. So yeah, it's basically, either the 15 in the year, or one really long stay dog, or the 3, within that 6-month period.
Great, thank you. Kelly, this one's for you. Currently, our organization requires training courses for each type of foster animal, such as orientation, dogs, puppies, cats, kittens, bottle babies, and nursing queens. Do you suggest getting rid of these training courses to remove this barrier for our foster program?
Not necessarily. I think look at the training courses and see how they can be made very low barrier. So, for example, Pima Animal Care Center has a adult dog foster program, and they have a training, but it's online, and it's like 45 minutes maybe. It can be done any time of the day. they show some videos and then you like answer some questions, and it's super easy for the foster staff, super easy for people to complete at home whenever they can. And so that makes it, I think, making it really low barrier and making it really easy for people to access, especially if you have, organizations that have in-person trainings that are certain times of the month, that can be a barrier to people who work during that time. And it can also be really tough on you guys. So I would suggest looking at them, seeing, what is absolutely necessary, and how you can make it easier to access.
Yes, you guys have been amazing. If you have any other questions that you would like us to answer, these guys will be available on the Maddie's Pet Forum, and there's a link to the Pet Forum on the chat. Also, if you're looking for more training and more information, we do have Maddie's University that has online apprenticeships that are open right now. They actually close tomorrow, which is a way of having a more intimate relationship with your training. And an online apprenticeship, you're able to get some teaching from some of these wonderful people over a period of time. And there's also self-paced courses on there to dive deeper into your training at Maddie's University. And all that is free to join. And there's a link there in the chat. Thank you to Allison, who's behind the scenes doing this. Well, Kelly and Jenica, you guys have been amazing. Any last words of wisdom as we wrap up?
No, thank you. And we're happy to answer any questions on MPF.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
Bye.